Hello and welcome to the JM Academy. My name's Alison Tarry and today we're going to be looking at loom beading. So what do you need to get started? You're going to need a loom. There are a variety on the market and we're going to have a look at some of them during the next chapter. A pattern, not essential, depending on what you're going to be doing. The more complex you want to do, the more likely you have a pattern. So we'll have a look at those again in a later chapter. You're going to need some beads. You can use almost any bead you want to do loom beading with. So you can use gemstone beads, you can use wooden beads, you can use seed beads, you can use Delicas, you can use different shaped beads, 2-hole beads, 3-hole beads, the whole variety, you can use them all. So it just gives you a different look and feel, a different design. So we'll get some beads in this during this project that we're going to work our way through. We're going to use some 8-0 Mayukis, but please don't think that you've got to have 8-0 Mayukis to do loom beading, because you don't. You need a needle. I prefer to have a loom needle because they tend to be longer, so it makes it easier to pass through. If you've only got seed beading needles, don't worry, you can use them. I do a lot of wider pieces, therefore you need a longer needle to be able to do it easier. You're going to need some thread. So any bead weaving thread will work for your more traditional loom beading. If you're going into the larger beads, then you can use larger threads. If you're using something like a NIMO or a KO, then you're going to need to condition them because they will stretch. So just be aware of that. You're going to have to wax them or accept that you're going to have some give in them and they're going to stretch. When you're doing the warp threads, that's when you really need them to be stable. You're going to need a good pair of scissors because you want to cut quite close. And this little thing, so you're going to use some masking tape, but don't worry, any old masking tape will do. It's not a problem. So you want some masking tape, it makes life so much easier. So that's all the basics of what we got needed, what we need. The next thing we're going to do is have a look at a variety of looms. What loom is going to work for you? It comes down to personal circumstances, I know, but also what you're going to be using it for. If you're going to be doing small pieces, then this is a great little loom. It's the jewel loom, it's the baby jewel loom. It's a fixed loom. By that I mean there's no give in it. You can't unhook, you've got your 2 little buttons at the back. You can't actually unhook your threads, so you're going to have to pull them through. Now, if you're doing something like small pieces or earrings, it's great, especially if you go into a point or even if you go into a square, because I'll show you later how you can pull your cords through and finish it and put a slider on. If you've got to finish both sides on the ends for a lot of pieces, it's going to take a lot of time. So that's the drawback with this one, and the fact that it's fixed and you've effectively got about that much space because you can't bead right up to the end, so you have to come in a bit. So if you're going to be doing lots of little things, this is brilliant. It's very portable and it's a nice size. It's a nice size to hold. So that's the baby jewel loom. Obviously this isn't a finite number of looms. There are a myriad of different types, but this is the most common varieties you get. We'll have a look next at the baby loom's big brother, the jewel loom. So the jewel loom actually is flat. Storage is brilliant. You need both pieces, so you've got a little tensioner, but as you can see, this is going to take up that much room. Perfect if you've got limited space, and it will do a bracelet with no problem, and you can take your pieces off to save time with the finishing. So that's the jewel loom. This is the loom we're going to be using throughout the rest of this video, so that you can see how we do a piece start to finish. This will be your project loom, so we'll come back to the jewel loom later, and it's a really nice little loom to use. I'm next going to go to the Little Ricky. So this is a beadsmith loom. It has a big brother, the Big Ricky. Again, this stores flat, so these pieces come out and everything comes out. It's an adjustable one. So as you can see under here, is you've got a whole line of holes. You can actually make your small pieces. Well, if you had to do, let's take this one next to it. If you had to do, even though you're going to pull your thread through, something on that big that you're only going to take as an inch long or 2 inches, then the amount of thread you've got to pull through, if you want to save your thread, is enormous. Otherwise, the amount of waste you're going to have is also going to be enormous. So anything that can do either small size or is adjustable is fabulous. So again, I would use this. You can do a full bracelet on it. It's got that width, that depth, but it can also do smaller pieces. So it's great for that fluctuation, that variety of size you want, and it'll store flat. You can also, we're going back to talking about setting up. Again, we'll look at this a little bit more depth in a later chapter, but you can also take your pieces off so it saves on your endings. Brilliant. Okay, so that and its big brother, the Big Ricky. Great, again, another variety. We then get to a more fixed one. So this, the first two we looked at, you can have them down, but they've got very little clearance. This hasn't got a lot of clearance to get in, but it has got some. This one, however, you can have on your desk. This is another beadsmith loom. You can be underneath it, and it's got quite a lot of clearance. If you suffer from dexterity issues, if you have arthritis, if you're going to have pain in your hands, holding a loom is going to be painful. If you can put it down and have a secure base, it makes life easier. You don't have to loom over it. Excuse the pun. You don't have to loom over it. You don't have to hold it. So again, it makes life a lot easier. You can just lift it, put it to one side when you need to have the space. So this is a nice one. Again, it's got tensioners, so you can just do that and take your thread off. So it's good for that as well. There is another thing we'll come back to when we're setting up. So this one is one of the pigtail ones. They have 3 or 4 different varieties. This is my favourite because even though the Little Ricky and the beadsmith one, the 2 beadsmith ones, are raised, they're still flat in front of you, so you're still looking over. This one, when you're beading on it, it's to your face, it's vertical to you. So you've got clearance behind it, but I like it raised so it allows me to sit up and not hunch over. So this is usually my go-to unless I'm doing something small. So it's got a width on it, so I've done several purses and pieces, so you can do a large piece of beading on that piece, so it allows you to have that length. I mean, you can go longer than that. It will give you that ability to go all the way down. It's adjustable in both ways, so these are adjustable and under there is adjustable, so it's fully adjustable and you can bead to it. So the other ones they do an extra long one. If you want to do a belt version, you can have a very long one. You can also have, they also have a flat one like this. So most companies that do looms have 2 or 3 different varieties of what they do. The question is, what are you going to be doing it for, and what are your personal circumstances? For me, doing a large project like this, which will be a purse when it's finished, having something that just sits there and allows me to carry on beading and still remain upright, this to me is the go-to one. Like I say, if I'm doing something small, the Little Ricky or the Baby Jewel, perfect, because you're not wasting time drawing thread through, you're not wasting time doing, well, with this one you've got to do your ends, with the little Ricky you don't have to do your ends. So they're both savers of time. This one isn't flat, but it still doesn't take up a lot of space, to be fair. This one breaks down. This is the most space saving one, and that's the dual loom that we're going to be using when we go further on. But this also gives you that ability to tension. These two don't give you the ability to tension. So the only other one, which was the game changer for me to start me back into looming, because I hated finishing all the ends, is the endless loom. Now this piece of kit got me into looming. You can do different sizes, so you have on here it tells you the length of what size bracelet it's good for. So you also get with this, whether you pick that up. So this is for an 8-inch bracelet. It tells you on it. It might. I'm not sure it's close enough for you to get it, but so this will tell you what size you need. You pop that in there. Setting up is as easy as that. You have tensioning rods, so depending on what size beads you have, you can put these in and go round. It will work for fixed, but where this actually comes into its own is there are special bands. So you have loom beading bands, and these literally just slip on. These are a bigger size, and you just slip these on and spread them out, and then you're good to go looming. So you'd put your tensioning rod in there because that's a bit small. There we go, and then you're good to go. So that means you've got absolutely 0 warp threads to finish. They're done. You're done. That's set up. You don't have any long, oh, I've got to set up this tension, I've got to do all that, I've got to use my threads. That is a game changer. You can do a bracelet in a couple of hours. And what you end up with, whether you're going for seed beads or whether you're going for a gemstone, this is a pearl bracelet I've done on there, you just get this beautiful finish. All you've got to do is the side cords, side threads, and you get lovely jewellery very quick. So for stretchy bracelets, this is your one. Perfect. To do a fixed piece, you can do it, but it's a bit more faffy. So for me, the joy of this one is doing your stretchies, doing bauble stretchies. The setup is minimal. It will still do gemstones, as you've seen with the pearl one. It will do seed beads. If you're going down to an 11/0 or smaller to do something that is a lot more patterned, then this one will lose, because your 11/0 you struggle to see it either side of your warp threads, because the elastic is a lot thicker than most threads you would use normally. So that's the limit with this. Is you're better off with 8/0s, with 6/0s, with bugle beads, with any other bead. These are great, but once you want to get into the fine detail, this starts to become a problem. It's harder because you've got to get over each piece of elastic. So they all have pros and cons. They're all good at what they do. So if you want a longer one, you'd go for one of these, or a wider one, you'd go for definitely one of those. If you want small ones, then you're looking at this side, and that's a really great general purpose one, but you have to hang on to it a bit more. So pros and cons on all the types. This covers the majority of types. You'll get slightly different tweaks per company, per brand. So think about what you want to use your loom for, and then look at what's available. But that will give you a good overview of what's out there and what they're good at. So next chapter we're going to go on to is having a look at what patterns we make. In this chapter, we're going to have a look at patterns. So you can use your loom without a pattern, absolutely. You can use it, so when we have something like this, you don't need a pattern. it's just one bead, one gemstone. If you've got stripes in seed beads, if you've got chevrons, you generally don't need a pattern. Some patterns you can get are repeating patterns, so you might only have a small amount of pattern and then you just repeat it, just go back to the start and start again. So you get those. Something like this, or some of the examples we have over here, so the animal ones, the tigers, the Celtic one, you're going to want a pattern for those. Every single line's different on the animal ones, and the star one, it's all different. So every single line you're doing a different arrangement of beads. To try and do that, if you're really good and you can do it freehand, then you can basically draw with seed beads. Then that's amazing. I'm not good enough for that. I can draw it, put it into a pattern, and then follow the pattern. With something like that, if you don't follow it exactly, nobody's going to know, unless they sit there and count everything. So when you're doing something that's a little bit more involved, for instance this, then you're going to want a pattern to follow. The piece we're doing today, which is this one here on the side, then again, it's a repeating pattern, but it's a pattern that you can have the whole pattern for. So we've got the pattern, you can get that pattern today as part of this video, and I'm going to show you how to read most of the patterns that are out there. So the vast majority of patterns you can get will give you that. That gives you everything you need to know. It gives you what beads to put on your needle when. Great, that does everything you need. However, if you're doing something that's got colours that are very close together, then it's very difficult to discern. For instance, I did an elephant and there were 11 different shades of grey. Now, you try and tell that subtlety apart is very difficult. It's even difficult to when you've laid the beads out to tell them apart. So something like that you need a pattern for. You're not going to be able to read it from that because, again, the difference is so subtle if you've got one or two beads, and you need that to get the realistic, the more realistic ones, so it is not cartoony. You need that subtlety. So on this one, each of the beads, so each dot is a bead. Each of the beads has a letter in it that corresponds to your key. So they both correspond to the key, but that has the letters of the key in it. So that's another way of reading it. It's slightly more difficult because you've got to look for the letter. You can obviously blow these up to a much bigger size if you want. You could do them that way and it would become obviously easier to read. So that would have each of the letters in. That's another way of reading it. You've got to have a key. You've got to know what beads for both this method and for what's coming down here. You've got to know what letter corresponds to what bead. Now, the joy of doing this and this is you can change what A, B, C, and D are. So if you don't want turquoise, white, black and gold, and you want red, pink, orange and yellow, then you can just write in here which one of these you want. So you might say, instead of gold, I want silver. So on the C, where it's got galvanized gold, you can just put silver. That C will then, everywhere there's a gold, you will be producing a silver. It makes it easier to change the colours without having to remember when you're looking at a coloured pattern, your guide. So that makes life a lot easier. I have known people who struggle to translate and say, every time I see a turquoise in the pattern, I need to know I put a red. And if you haven't got the mindset to be able to do that in your mind, then this gives you a way of doing it because you don't have to struggle with what's next. So it is a much more visual way of doing it and an easier way to read it. To take away the pattern completely, the visual pattern, and go for what I tend to say is more of a knitting pattern style. Each row literally just tells you what you have to put on. Now for me, this is the easiest way I can use a pattern, because I will draw a line through it. I have dogs. if you don't have dogs, you might want to just put a piece of paper across and then just move it down, and that's fine. That's my row. If you're going to get it knocked, then that makes it a bit of a problem. You can clip it, but then that makes it a little bit of a meh. If you've got a stand that will allow, you can get stands with pattern readers, so you get a thing that goes across like a barrier, and that will move down. You can just move that down for each one, then great, they'll work as well. I just put a line through the one I haven't done. If you want to reuse it, either copy your pattern, or what you can do is cover it in acetate, and then you can just use a dry mark pen, a dry white pen, and then wipe it off afterwards. Or you could use a light pencil and do it. So there are ways of reusing it if you don't want to have to print it out all the time. So this will tell me I'm starting at the left. Row 1, I want 1C, so I'm having 1 gold, 2A, 2 matte black, 1C, 1 gold, 2A, 2 matte black, and 1C. You can forget about what A, B, C, and D mean. Like I say, when you go back to the most I've had I was up to R, so I had that many different ones set out on my thing, and I had to work out which ones were going where. So by doing this, it becomes very easy. You've just got to look, you've just got to read it each time. So that's how you would read most patterns. Like I say, some will just give you that, some will give you the letters in it, some will just give you the dots for each colour. For a pattern like this, that's very easy to read. You've only got to read 7 beads across. So it's not hard to count them. I can count, right, I need 3 beads, 3 blues, 3 turquoise blues in the middle of there. That's not hard. If you've got something that's, for instance, on this loom we had here, so if you've got this and you've got to count how many clears do I have before I have that, or how many's here, that's a lot more to count them, takes for ages. Whereas if you've got something that says 25 clear or 25C, brilliant, you just put 25 on your needle. That makes life so much easier, having this sort of pattern. So have a think about something like that. When you've got the pattern, what makes it a lot easier, and this is where our masking tape comes in, one of the uses, is you can set it out. So you don't have to permanently mark a bead mat, but basically I set it out, I've got those. When you've only got 4, you can go, yeah, that's A, B, C, D, that's great, you don't need it. When you've got down to Q and you've got 2 rows of beads, you don't want to go A, B, C, D, E, right, it's that one, and then I need to put 4 on. You want to be able to go, I need to go to M, and I can see that straight away, and I've gone there. So again, I've done this to show to you the best way you can do it, but it's a really good aid. So like I say, if you don't have that pattern, the coloured pattern in front of you, you can put any bead colour you want in A, B, C and D. You're going to get that pattern in totally different colours. And trust me, it will look different in the different colours. It's amazing how different. I've done this in traditional harlequin colours, and it looks a totally different pattern. So whatever you're doing, it gives you that freedom to be able to change it. If you want to do house colours, if you want to do football colours, then you're not restricted. You can do your pattern, and then you can change which football team colours you're going to use. If you've got only 3 colours, and you say, well, I just want turquoise and blue, and then where it's black, I'll have that all gold, then wherever it's black, you just put gold. So you can still use the same pattern, and wherever it says A, you say, oh no, that's A, but A says it's gold. So on here, you would have gold, white, gold, turquoise. I know it sounds counterproductive, you've got 2 lots of gold, but it means you can follow the same pattern and you don't have to think about it. So anything that makes it easier and you don't have to think about is, in my game, it's a win-win. So that's how you read your patterns. How do you make your patterns? Or how do you get a pattern? So you can buy patterns all over the place. Seed beading loom beading particularly, is a an easy thing to use to make patterns. You can use ordinary graph paper. If you look on, let's use this one because it's bigger. So each bead is directly over a bead and directly next to a bead. Exactly the same as you'd get if you had graph paper. You could colour in those squares in different colours and create your own patterns. I've known of people whose children have created their own patterns using Minecraft. It's exactly the same. So those building blocks, those squares, are exactly what you use. Unlike other seed bead techniques like peyote or brickwork, where they stagger, these are next to each other. Where does that become really useful? Cross stitch, same pattern layout. So you can use cross stitch patterns. You could take a section of a cross stitch pattern, or you can take a little motif and put it into your beading. Diamond painting, very, very popular. You can take a bit of a diamond painting, exactly the same. They all stack directly on top of each other, directly next to each other. There's no diagonal. So all of these, anything that's got those straight lines, you can use as a pattern. If you can get software if you want to create your own that will do it. You can use most photo editing, anything like Photoshop, that can also be used to create it. So there's a lot of different ways, but the easiest way is a piece of graph paper, or if you go online you can download blank loom beading patterns, and they come with a little bead shape and you can colour those in. So whatever way you want to do, it is a very easy design ethic, design method, because of the way the beads stack side by side, one on top of the other. So you know it's very easy. You've got a row and the next row is going to be on top of each other. So it's a very easy means of beading to create a pattern for, because you don't have to worry about it. So there are loads and loads of patterns out there on the internet. You're going to get this one free, so it'll get you started. It's not a massively complicated pattern. It's a good one to get you started. And we're going to follow this through the next chapters. So next chapter, we're going to have a look at how we actually set up our loom. In this chapter, we're going to look at setting up our loom. So a loom is basically has been developed from loom fabric. So it's done on the same principle with a slightly different technique. So you still have warp threads, you still have weft threads. So what are they? Your warp is what is fixed in. That's your warp thread. Your weft, the way I always remember it, wafts through. It wefts through. So your warp thread is what's fixed, and your weft is what you go backwards and forwards with. Now obviously on a fabric loom, they have little things that move either or to trap the thread. On this way, we move the beads up and down and trap them on either side of the warp. So each time you see a row of beads, and I'm using these because they're big beads to see. So with the pearls, you can see the white elastic. Let me move that out of the way a little bit. So you can see the warp, these are elastic, so you can see all the warps, and then the thread goes through the bead above the warps and then back under the bead, and then thus securing that bead in place so it can't go up and down, and then it loops around and goes to the next one. So that's how a loom works. We'll look at that a bit more once we start using it. So how do we set them up? So I've got here 3 slightly different varieties. We've had a look at the varieties. We had a look on setting up your endless loom, which was, you know, the easiest loom in the world to set up. You put your bands on and you're good to go, having you put your dowels in. That's the easiest loom in the world to set up. To do a more, I call them a fixed piece of jewellery, be it a bracelet, be it a bag, or be it a necklace, a dog collar. You can use loom beading anywhere. So to use a more fixed, solid piece of beading, you need one of these varieties. So these are most of the varieties you're going to use. You've got your fixed one. This is, I think, the hardest one to set up because you've got to create the tension and create it evenly. This won't move, so as you're setting it up, you've got to keep that tension there yourself. So this is a harder one, but you're lucky because it's not very big. So it's got size on its side. However, you have to keep the tension yourself. We'll have a look at that in a minute. This one sets up and uses a tensioning rod to hold it in place. You then release that tensioning rod and this opens up a bit, which creates a better tension. So this you've got a little bit more leeway with. When you've got this, the Pigtail, the Little Ricky, what you've got is movable end parts. So I always set them slightly inside like that. So as you set it up, you're going to and fro to these little buttons, and then when you're ready to fix it, you can turn those out, close it up, and then really tension them with this. Now this one will sort of spring a little bit, so that's a problem with that one. The Pigtail is rigid, so once you've twisted these back, then you're fixed in that place and you can do a really good tension. If you have a piece of work on your loom for any period of time, unlike these two, you can reduce that tension. When you're tensioning it, your thread, you're basically stretching the thread. If you keep anything in a state of stretch under tension for any period of time, you will alter it. So what will happen is you will cause it to be, it will stretch permanently a little bit. It will never go back the longer you keep it. If you're going to have it on the loom for any period of time, and I mean weeks and months, not a few days, then just slack it off and ease it. You only need to ease it 1 millimetre or 2. You only need to give it a part turn, you know, go from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock. You need a very little turn. You don't want to lose all this, but that then, because it's very difficult to put it back on, because that then will just ease that tension enough. It's like I was always taught, if your car is going to stand for a long period of time, you put it on blocks and you release the tension in the tyres so that the pressure isn't constantly on the tyres. It's the same sort of thing. Release the tension and then it will keep. The endless loom, all you have to do is slide the elastics off and you can slide them back on with a part finished piece. So that one's dead easy. Again, it's dead easy for that. Take it off. Oh no, I've got to make another bracelet for Johnny who's coming round and he wants something for his sister. Take what I'm doing off, pop something else on, and you're good to go. These you all need to leave, it needs to stay on them, however you can release the tension. Now, with this and the Pigtail we had earlier, the other thing you can do is you can make your threads far longer. So you can have extra distance. So if I wanted to do a much bigger piece than this, what I would do is take this off, find a means of fixing them. So you might have this in a clamp and this fixed over there. You can then come all the way this way and do it. So you're going, you know, far further, you're coming beyond the loom barrier, and then wind it up, and then you can fit that in. So as you are creating your piece, now your big problem is, let me get that on there, whoops. You want your washer on the outside, by the way. So with this, that's fine. You can then twist it and roll it as you need more, and you're rolling it in on the other side. So your loom work is going like that. However, these buttons are going to be a problem. So if you've got your piece of fabric and it's coming over here, then that loom, that is going to stick up. What you can do is get a piece of lagging, pipe lagging, and you cut it to this size, make 3 little holes in it so that they will sit in there, but this bit will all be filled in. So as you're rolling it around, this is then on something that it's just going to sit over the top without getting that in. So you've still got your tension, but you've then lagged basically around these buttons, so they're not going to be an issue. So that's the way you can extend your loom to do bigger pieces. Like I say, you can get long looms that will do bracelet, necklace lengths, but this is a way of encouraging a loom you've got and making it do a little bit more if you don't want to have 6 or 7 different looms. Obviously I collect them. So we're going to have a look at this one. We'll have, setting them up is different. That one's already set up. We've had a look at your endless loom. Most of the others come, you've just got to undo the butterflies, take off your barrel to put it away, and the same with setting it up again. So they're quite easy to do. They set up and take down. Most of them have 1 or 2. The Peakdale has a separate that bit screw part at the top which you use. The screw bit it gives you the distance. So on here they have got a spring which they have used to give you the spacing. When you're setting up your loom, you need to take into account what size bead you're using. If you set it up so that it's so narrow for an 11/0 bead, then and you try and use a 6/0, then obviously you're going to have a problem. Likewise, if you set it up for a 6/0 and using 11/0 beads, the beads are going to be here, are going to be pulled in like that. So have a think. This is set up for 8/0s. You can use it if you want to do 6/0s. I would do every other. And if you want to do 11s on this one, then I do 2 in one, 1 in the next, 2 in one, 1 in the next, so that when you've got your first row in, that puts them in the right spacing without having too much gapping. These two are set up for 11s. You can double the spacing for 8s, you can triple the spacing for 6/0 beads, and vice versa. So it's trial and error when you're doing a lot of them. You'll have to find out what spacing your loom has. Some looms have variable spacing, so you can set in a different piece to do that spacing. So we're going to set up this one to be able to do our project. Now this is flexible. You have your buttons on the back. This is what we're going to put our thread round. And we have our tensioning rod. So you want your tensioning rod on this side to hold it like that, so that you can go around the buttons on the back. It's got 2 holes and it's got this little piece of wire. So you pop your wire in the first hole. Obviously it's not going to reach. I lean it against my body, bend it in slightly. If you bend this in as well, it should just drop it into the hole. Come on. You then have your banana shape. So from a flat piece, we've got this banana shape. So that means when we take this out, the only thing that's going to be holding this in a form of banana is going to be our thread. So that thread is instantly under tension because this is effectively sprung. That is completely under tension. Therefore, as soon as you take this out, that's where you get your tension from. Unlike this one where you're physically turning it and tightening it and creating the tension that way. And this one, like I said, you've had to put that tension in yourself, going down, pulling it, keeping it the same tension. That takes practice. So I've got some wildfire here. Like I say, there are other ones you can use. I tend to use wildfire or fireline because they're pre-stretched and they are coated. So when later we come to finishing off our piece, that has a big impact on whether you can finish it the quick way, shall we say. So I start off with a loop. Why do I start off with a loop? I've just created an overhand knot to create a loop because the easiest way to start is to pop that over there and you're good to go. I tend to go round like that because I like to have a little bit of extra at the start. Now on our pattern we've got 8 and we're doing 8/0s, so we want 8 widths, but I'm doing them every other. So you can start in the middle, work out exactly where it is. Does it matter if I do it here, here or here? No, because this will be under tension, so it won't matter. Do I tend to do it in the middle? Yes, because then you haven't got a lot of that to cross with your hand, you've only got a small amount. So we're going to go across there and across. Again, does it matter if it's not directly across? Do you need to count the ends? No, you don't. If it's at a slight angle, it makes no difference whatsoever. We're then going to turn it over and nip around that little button at the back and go back to, like I said, every other. So we're going back into not the one directly next to it, but the next one. Now I keep this, I want it, I'm not pulling it tight. I don't need that at a really tight tension, but I don't want it to be sort of slack like that, because A, it can come out, and B, it's going to be difficult. It's going to go almost flat. So you want it to be firm. Get out of the way. You want it to go across, so I'm going to go back across to the next one, pick up, like I say, every other, so it's not gone into the one next to it, it's gone to the next one. As you can see, this is got a tension, but it's not hanging loose. Take it round the back, pop round there. So we're going to do that 8 times. Why do we need 8 when we've only got 7 beads? Because you want a warp thread either side of every bead. If you've got a good pattern, they will tell you how many you want. If it's a small number, it doesn't matter because it's easy to count. If you're trying to do something that's got, like I say, the biggest I've done is 83, I think. That's quite tough to count. And you've got pretty much the full width of the Peakdale loom. So that's quite a big piece. Also, when you're doing this, you can guarantee someone's going to talk to you because you'll forget how many you've done. So it is the bit you have to concentrate with. If you do it and you've got one too many, you can work with that. But if you've got one too less, again, if you want to, there are ways around it, but I would just undo it and start again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we've got our full lot. We've gone round the back. I'm then going to come up to the other side from the start, wrap it a couple of times around to secure it, but I'm then going to tie it. So get your scissors, give it a decent amount off, and we're going to tie it onto itself. So you're going to go, I don't want to tie it around the whole lot. I'm just going to feed it through, and that will help bring that over out of the way and then tie it. So you're just doing a series of overhand knots to secure this into position, and you want it in a tight place. If you can avoid having the knot right at the top, then that's good, because all you do is you end up getting little bits tied at the knot, tied at the top. It's not the end of the world, but it just makes life a bit different. When you come down here, you can usually get underneath, so it gives you an easy way of getting that. So we want 3 or 4 knots that we know, and slide them up, are going to be in place. Now that is already starting to hold. I just like a couple more to make sure it's not going to come undone, because the last thing you want when you're 3/4 of the way through a piece and you spent hours working on it is for your warp threads to have worked their ways loose. So we've now got our piece, and you can see mine is offset. Doesn't matter, it's going to work. We now need to take this off. What's the risk to taking this off? As soon as you do that and release the tension, these can jump. So this is where our masking tape comes back into place. We're just going to pop a piece over our threads and over that groove. Doesn't matter which loom I do, because if I slack the tension on one of the bigger looms, then of course you're risking it coming out of place again. So I always put it on. It has other uses as well, which I'll go through in a minute. So we're going to pop that on there and fasten it. What possible other uses could we have? Well, now we've got our loom basically, oh no, let's tension it first. So to tension it, we've got to slack that off to be able to get that off, because it won't come out. So we're going to just ease it. Can you see how the threads have gone? If we hadn't had that fixed, then that risks it. Now I've taken that out, and you've now got that under tension. The only thing that's holding that in that banana shape is those threads. So those threads are quite nicely under tension. And because we didn't pull it tight, if you pull this tight as you're doing it, what happens with this one is it gets tighter and tighter and tighter, so it tends to be slacker here than here. If you keep it even without pulling it tight, just get to it so that it touches, then what happens is you get a nice even tension. So we can put that to one side. We're now ready to start our beading. So we're going to get our, we're going to fetch back our thread with our beads on it, our board and our pattern. I tend to set it up so I have the beads on one side and then the loom in the middle. Depending on how you work, if you have unlimited space, then that's great. I have a finite workspace. Then you can even go to that. What I want to avoid is permanently twisting. So depends on how you have your setup at home and how much space you need. Depends on what you're doing. So you want your pattern easily accessible. So I'm going to pull that into there because I don't need this space on this one. I have had ones that go to 2 rows. I've never had a 3-rower. But the more complicated your pattern, the more you're going to have to space-wise. So we can go, I usually do a double wingspan. Whatever is comfier to you to bead with. The more you can have, the wider you can have, the less finishing off you have to do. So we're back to that again. We're back to finishing off. How do we make it more time effective? That's what you're looking for is your time efficiency. So I'm going to thread my needle. There we go. Hardest thing you can do. Thread your needle. So a loom needle tends to have a slightly bigger eye than most of your seed bead needles, which makes it generally easier to thread. So I'm going to take my end of my thread and I'm going to start, for me I go top left. If you want to go top right, if you want to go bottom left or bottom right, doesn't matter so long as you're consistent when you're following a pattern. Your piece when you've finished it is the same front and back unless you've got a piece where you've got, I don't know, a horse looking off in that direction. If you turn it the other way, the horse is looking in that direction. Everything else is the same. The beads aren't one-sided, generally. So whatever you've put on will be the same. So the basic pattern we've got here, doesn't matter which way you start, it's gonna be fine whichever way. So traditionally I start top left. I'm going to put my thread between 1 and 2 warp threads, and then I'm just going to do a single overhand knot. I can then move that. It's not hard fixed, it's not permanent. I can unpick that if I need to. I can slide it up and down because it's not tight on that warp. So the other good use for your masking tape, lift that up, pop your tail end underneath there, put your masking tape back down. It keeps all the threads out of the way. So if they're loose, they're getting in your way when you're going to and from. This keeps them all out of the way, behind, underneath your loom, makes life a lot easier. So we're going to start beading. So at the moment my thread is over the top. Doesn't matter when you turn it. So I want 1C, 2A, 1C, 2A, 1C. So it's a nice easy pattern, and again, as you can see, it's a longer needle, so you can hold it quite comfortably and you can go all the way down to here. You're not going to get, you can do enough to do one of the wider pieces, like the tiger. You've got enough to put a row on at a time. So that needle will go all the way through there at one time. You don't go much wider than that on a cuff. It starts getting unwieldy on your wrist because your wrist tapers. So it's a nice size. When you're doing the bigger pieces, the bracelet, the bags and things, then you're going to have to go through several times. So what you would do is you would put them all down. It doesn't matter, you're going to slide them down anyway. So We're going to then take that, and I'm going to move that out of the way so you can see this more centrally. I'm then going to pass my needle underneath my warp threads. And I've done it in black so you can see them. Now you can see these are not quite perfectly fitting to there, but it doesn't matter so long as you've got one bead between each of the warps. I'm then pushing up with my finger, and I don't know whether we're going to be able to show this, but basically the hole in the bead, the thread is underneath, and we're pushing the bead so that the hole is above the sides of the warps. You can just about see that, can't you? So when we pass our thread back through, we're now going above, we want to be above the warps. If you've got a black thread, you can watch it going over the top of all your warps. Now we know we haven't caused anything because that's movable. So the thread is below, the needle is above, those beads are now fixed. So you draw your thread through. The first one will now give you the sizing for the rest. So that's now cinched in a little bit, and that will give you the exact sizing for all the rest of your beads, so it becomes easier. Whenever you do it, it's like most things, the first one is what sets everything up, and that's the easiest one. So next we'll do another row, and we're going to do 2A. So I'm going to pull these back in, squash it down. 2A is my next one, 1C, 1D, 1C, 2A. Because this pattern it's a nice easy pattern to do. So not only is it a repeater pattern as you're going through the rows, but also it's mirrored. So you get to the mirror point and it's exactly the same. So I know 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. So I generally count my way up. So I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's just a little thing I do. So I've come underneath my thread. So I'd come over the top on here. I've now gone underneath the thread. I'm going to slide the beads up, pop them through, and you'll hear, because that's now tighter, and as you go down, you'll hear a little schnick as you actually, those beads aren't going to fall out because these are now the correct width for that. And the more rows you have on, the more these can form. So you can pop your beads underneath, push up with your finger. As I push up with my finger, I push down with my thumb. So you can see the tension on my finger where it goes a bit white because I'm pushing up with that, but I'm also pushing down. So that means these are trapped basically between my finger and my thumb and pushing these up. So going through with an 8/0, it's a lot easier because you've got an 8 and a 6. You've got loads and loads of room for that bead to go. If you're doing an 11, if you do a 15, there is a small amount, so it becomes harder. So you have to practice the technique. So I would always say, if you've not done any loom beading before, start with an 8. An 8 is great. A 6 is quite big, so that has its own, you know, you have to get used to that. But an 8 is a lovely size to loom with, and also it grows quite quickly. So then you're going to pull your thread through. Notice I'm hooking it round there, so I don't want it to snag, and I've pulled that. Now, what's happening here? This side, your thread is going around this warp. On this side, it goes straight and back. So these two aren't connected. This side, they are connected. Okay, so that's just something to remember. And if you want to slide them up, now you've got your tension. Can you see how it's coming narrower at the top? So you can slide them up when you've done a few. Now you've got it in position and you're good to go for the rest of them. You will keep beading following your pattern down. What happens if you miss one? The most common one to miss is the end one. And all that will happen, so I'm going to show you that one. When you miss one, so we need to do 1, 1, then we're going to have 3 of those. So 1 of those and 1 of those. So like I say, repeating pattern. The most common one to miss, push those down and stick them in, is that one, because it's very easy, and I'm going to exaggerate it, it's very easy to sort of not catch the bottom of that and that one to be a little bit lower. I'm going to struggle to make this happen now. So I'll pop my needle through there, but it is the easiest one to miss. And then I'm going to run them across the top. So, come on, there we go. And what will happen is that bead, if I've done that right, should pop down, okay? But it's not. I've obviously caught it. So the bead will pop down. If it's in the middle, you'll notice a bead will sag. And if you push it, you can push it below. All you have to do is go back down and back through. If you've noticed when it's halfway down the piece, again, it's not the end of the world. Find the nearest end, or even put another piece in and go down and across and catch it. It's not going to go anywhere. If you've missed the entire row, A, that's going to be very clever to do, and you'd have to deliberately do it. And B, you just won't. So if you've missed a few in it, don't worry about it. They're not going to go anywhere because they're held by the others, but you will get a little dip. But you can, like I say, you can go back, you can go through there as many times as your bead will allow you. So once you've done that, you keep going with your pattern until you run out of thread. What do you do when you've run out of thread? Give it a good length, snip it, pop this out, and then feed your thread back through there. Now you notice I haven't tied the one coming out because it's held by all the beads. This one's got nothing on it. So I top that in, slide it back up to there, and put your next lot of beads on, and you're good to go. We'll look at how we finish off these. Pop them underneath your masking tape at the top. They're out of the way. They're not going anywhere. Nothing's going to come out, and you're good to carry on beading. So keep going till you finish the piece, and then in the next chapter, we're going to look at how we actually finish your bracelet. In this chapter, we're going to look at how we take the beading off our loom and how we finish the ends, and then we'll look at the clasps in the next one. So first of all, you've finished looming to your pattern. It's the size you want. With a pattern like this, it's very easy to extend or reduce it. It's just a repeating pattern. If you've got a more elaborate pattern, for instance, one of the ones we've got on the display, so say the tiger, then you might have to sort of add a background colour and just do a neutral colour, or just add some that blend in. But this is a very easy pattern to do. You've done it to the length you want. We now need to take it off and finish our ends. So first off, we're going to take our masking tape off. Now with this loom, as I said during the setup, different looms will do different things. Some you can just unscrew and then it'll just come off easily. This one's held under tension by the pure action of it being flexed. So you've got this banana thing that actually keeps this tension. So you're going to have to, if you prop it up against your body a little bit, and you're just going to bend it in a little bit so we can undo. So I'm showing you what you're going to do. We're going to bend it that way. This is a little bit harder. So on the back, your two sides, you'll have one that's got the start and finish, and one that's just got your loops round. That's the easiest end to get it off. Get yourself something like a pair of scissors, but you're not going to open them. You don't want to cut it. You want to put them through there so you can hook it round. So as you bend it, you release that tension and you slip them off, as easy as that. Don't overbend. These are plastic. If you overbend it, you will snap it. Just gently, like you saw, if you put the scissors underneath, and you can just roll it over the top of your little button there. And then you can come to the other end, undo that, and then we worry about where we've knotted it to secure it. And we're just going to snick that end. That's why I always make sure I've got plenty attached at the end. It just makes life easier. Take your needle out, and I'm going to put this board to one side because we don't want that anymore. We're just going to worry about, and we don't want that bit. So what we need to do now, the easiest way with a lot of looms is the finishing off. So what a lot of people used to do is cut the ends there, and then you've got to finish off all of these ends. There are two ways to do it, and I'm going to show you part one and part the other. If you've got a bracelet that you're finishing and it's not going to have a slider, so by the slider I mean one of these sitting over the end, then you need to be tidy. If you're putting one of those through, you can just cut these, knot them, glue them and slide the slide on, and nobody knows anything different. But I'm going to show you how to pull your threads through. This has got two things. It saves you a lot of thread because you get to reuse it, but also it means you're finishing less ends. So if you've got something with an awful lot of ends to finish and you actually just want to, you don't want to put a slider on, then it's going to have a different type, then you need to pull them through. So I'm not going to pull that end one. I'm going to take the next one. Keep your eye up here on this first black one. So if I pull this, I'm going to put my hand flat on that to stop it snagging and just pull that through. Can you see that thread coming through? So what you're doing is pulling it through, and you want to basically stop without pulling it as it meets the beading at the other side. And you're going to go through them and pull it through. So this has two things. What it does is you can then reuse the thread you're pulling through. So I'm going to pull the next one along. I'm pulling this side because it'll pull that end. So I'm going to pull the next one along. It gives you this thread back. If you just knot them, you've wasted meters and meters of thread. As you come to that end, keep an eye, and it'll do right. So it gives you a lot more thread to go back and use. You couldn't reset up a loom with it, but you can certainly use it as your weft thread. So we're going to pull the next one through. If it snags, so if you get to a point where you can't pull it, don't try and force it. Never, never. Always do this gently. Never try and snag it. Because what that means is, as you've been beading through it, you've caught one of these warp threads and you've split it and gone through. So as you're trying to pull it, it's got nowhere to go because it's one of these. And what you're doing is it'll cause it all to bunch up. So always do this very lightly. If there's at all any resistance, stop instantly and know that at that point you're going to have to have a knot in it or finish it through threading through. So pulling this down gently. The more you loom, the less likely you are to snag your threads, but it does still happen. But usually when you've got a bigger amount will it happen. Something small like this you don't usually do, but when you've got something like the one I showed you earlier where you've got 83 warp threads, then you're more likely to catch one of them. You're less likely to see all of the ones going through. So we're just going to pull the last two through, making sure all the time if you get your threads going through the loop, make sure you pull them out of the way, because otherwise it just gets itself in a tangle. Pull it down. So you can see you're now getting quite a lot of loose thread, and you'll also see I haven't finished the side ones, and I'll tell you why in a moment. So we've got one more to thread through. You won't pull the end ones. The end ones get really secured by the turning of the thread. So you won't be able to pull this through on this one because on the outside they're pulled tight each time you go through the weft. So that will, and I'll show you, this is what I mean by when it snags. I can pull that, but it won't pull. If I carried on doing that, can you see it moving? And what it'll do is unbalance it. So that would happen in the middle if you've caught your thread. You've now got quite a lot of thread that you can use. So we're going to cut it fairly short. Right, because we're putting the slider on, I can knot this. If I wasn't putting the slider on, I would have to feed it back through to be able to finish it. But I would still, given it's on the end, do a little knot. So we're going to just pop a knot. We're using the end of our weft threads, the end of the threads that have been going backwards and forwards, as well as the last little bit of your warp threads. And we're just going to do a couple of overhand knots just to secure them. You would then dab it with a little bit of nail varnish or glue. I'm going to put one more knot in because I haven't got my nail varnish. Doesn't matter how many because you're not going to see it. Pull it tight and snip. Now when you snip it, you don't have to go right up to the knot, which you would normally do, because it doesn't matter. Give it a couple of millimeters, which will help secure it, and then you can just snip it off. That then means you can roll this up. That's the short one, but even that you can reuse. You know, all this costs money, so anytime you can save a little bit of money, it's good. Whereas this one, you've got probably nearly 2 meters. You've got nearly 2 meters length of thread there. So that wouldn't, if you cut them all and work them through, then that is thread that is going to go to waste, basically, which, you know, none of us want to see that. So secure that. I've just looped it around my fingers and then wrap it a little bit round and loop the end through to secure it. And then you've got a nice little skein of cord to go for the next lot. So you've now got this one on his own here. This is the only one you're going to have to thread through because he's got no one, he's Billy no mates, and he's got no one to knot to. So what I would do with him, this is the warp that's come up through here. If you go back, you're literally just hanging it off there. I usually go over and then through there to this side where you can secure him. So we're going to pop him back on the needle. And again, this is why I have a decent amount at the start and finish, just to give you enough space to do this. So we're going to pop him back on through the needle. There we go. So we're ignoring the first one and we're going through the second bead. And we're going to take him straight across there and out through the other side. We can now take these and knot these together like we did on the other side. And that makes so much difference. Even this one that's only got 8 warps, even on this one, finishing those 16 ends is what to me was the off-putting bit about doing loom beading. I loved everything else but the finishing off. And once you can do things like this, it makes such a difference, such a huge difference. So we've now, all we've got left is we've got to do our sides. So again, I would just knot them, just do a couple of overhand knots. There we go, with each of them. Now the reason I didn't do this first, even though it gets in the way a little bit when you're doing your looming, if you've done a very wide bracelet, you're going to have obviously a lot more of these because it can only go so far. But the reason I don't do them is because when you go through, you risk snagging it again. So it's all designed to not cause a problem, so that you can pull your cord through. If you keep control of your cord and keep moving it to one side, then it's generally okay. The other thing you can do is kind of put these underneath another piece of paper out of the way, just to weigh them down and keep them not getting in. Right, so now you've got your knot. What we're going to do is we're going to take both of the ends, even though they're secure, through your beads. Now because these are 8 O's, what that means is they're going to be big enough to absorb that knot. Even an 11 will. So you're going to put that in there, and if you can see that knot, let me see, can you see that knot on the end? There you go, yeah. I'm going to pull him into that bead and you lose him. So I'm going to take the other one and do the same, and basically what you're doing is you're absorbing it so you don't see it. You then just dab a little bit of nail varnish on the end just to make sure it doesn't come back out. So we're going to pop that in there. So when you've joined in and when you There we go, pull him into there, and then he's completely absorbed, and now you can't really see him. And we'll do the same with the other one. Yeah, so whenever you're starting or finishing, that's why I don't knot it, I don't secure it until right at the very end. Apart from the clasp, it's the last thing I'd do. So we're going to put him into there. And again. I usually come out of different beads so that you don't get the same. There we go, just pull him in. You can usually feel a snick as it actually gets pulled in, and then you know. I usually come out of different beads so you don't get the two ends, you can actually get a tighter finish. So all you want to do is put your scissors really close, and if you put some tension on it, it should spring back into the bead so you don't see that little bead end. So we're going to take them both down. There we go. So now you can't see where they've been. The only bits we've got are those bits there, and we'll get rid of those in the next chapter, where we're going to look at what sort of clasps you can have. In this chapter, we're going to look about attaching the clasps to our project. So with this project, I've got some slider ends to put on. We'll go through that, an extender chain and a bolt ring. This is a great way of finishing your bracelet. It's a great way of finishing bracelets to sell where you don't know what wrist size is. So you can do a standard size, a 7-inch or something like that, and then have an extender, or do it a little bit smaller and have an extender. It's up to you. It can give you a lot of options. If you've done a fixed size, then you're limiting your market to people who've got that wrist size. So this is the most flexible option. I've got some more options that I'll show you once we finish this one. So these again are a game changer for doing commercial sales of loom bracelets, because they cut down on the amount of time. The biggest thing in most craft products that you're going to sell is time. That is the biggest overhead that you'll have, provided you're being sensible and actually charging for your time. So the time is what takes the most time. Anything that can make it quicker is brilliant. So like I said in the last chapter, if you don't have to sew in each individual thread, and that takes ages, then that's a game changer. That makes such a difference. So the sliders, what it says on the tin, they slide over the end of your beads and then they're shut. So they're a tube with a little bit punched out that you can attach your clasps to, and then you've got your little door. There's one each side, but that one's always shut. You just shut the door and it's done. So not only is it quick, it hides a multitude of sins. If you've had to cut other ones along because they've snagged, or if you decide you're just going to cut them off your loom because it's a fixed loom, then you can just whiz them off, tie knots in them, trim them all. Then don't put the slider on, or don't glue them or nail varnish them until you're ready to put the slider on. Because what happens is, if you set all those with your glue just before you do it, or your nail varnish, when you put them on and you literally put it on your slider like that, so what happens is this gap here, the groove on the bottom, goes over the warp threads, but the beads are too small to come through it. So that's how it works. So if your glue / nail varnish is still wet, it will stick to the inside of the slider as well. So it doubly secures everything. So you can also have it slightly wide. So as you can see, ideally this would have been one narrower, but it wouldn't have worked for the pattern. So one you can get away with squashing in. So all you need to do then is just close that, but close it on top of that bead. So I'm going to use the side there, close it shut, and it just hugs it slightly. So you can't really tell that that's a size smaller. So I'm going to do the same. I always go from wherever you've got the one on the end is the first one I put in, rather than you're trying to make sure those go inside, you automatically push them in. Now the other thing you've got to remember is when they come, you might have a slightly narrower groove. Take your scissors, closed so you don't damage your scissors, and just run them down there to open it up slightly. It'll just make it a lot easier to slide on. It's still narrower than the bead, so the bead's not going to come out. So it just whizzed down, tuck your last bead in, and most of them you can bend with your fingers, but you're just going to push that closed. Come on, there we go. And now you've got it very professional looking. You haven't got any beading. It's my preferred way of doing them, both for time and I think it's the neatest, tidiest way. So then all we need to do is open our jump rings and attach your clasp. So we'll have a, do look whether you want it left or right. This pattern is the same front and back, and it's the same left or right, so it doesn't matter which side you put your clasps on. If someone wants it on the other side to fasten the other way, then it's easy. Again, you can alter it. You can just swap the clasp over, which you can't easily do on, gosh, this is such a good jump ring, I can't find the end. You can't normally do with a stitched clasp. So we're going to pop that in there, pull it through, and just fasten. So finishing it is as easy as that. Make sure your jump ring is closed properly. You've now got a fully adjustable bracelet that will fit virtually any wrist, especially with the length I've got there. But you'd have that will fit on anyone, or you can just put a jump ring on if you know how big it is, and it's good to go. You've now finished your piece of jewellery and it's good to wear, gift or sell. That's one method of doing it. So we're now going to have a look at some other options you've got with clasps. So we'll start with actual sliders, but where it doesn't quite fit. So it's very difficult to get a very, very wide slider. You don't usually get them to this width. So what I've done is I've just made my loom beadings shorter and shorter. This will still work with the pulling the thread through method. You get a little corner as it goes from one row to the next, but you don't see it. So it works just as well. You can pull it through and it will still work. And then you can slide on whatever size slider you've got. It's too big just to put one single clasp without a slider. You would have to have two, because what will happen is the corners will curl up. So I would say if you're going to do it that width, you need to either take it down to a slider if you've got one, or have a look at a way of putting two on. So that's another way of having a clasp, is if you need to narrow it down. Works great, you can do it. You can narrow all the way down to a point if you're going to do, maybe you want to do this as a bookmark. That's easily done as you're going through. Okay, so that's that one. So we then have a look at, this is a special type of slider. So basically it's a slider that's just got a tongue at the end, but that bit of it is the same. So this still slides with your little flap over the end, the same as normal, but you've already got that clasp attached. So again, a very nice way of finishing it. Looks really good, especially on a wider cuff. However, it is fixed. You can't make that adjustable. It has to be the size you want it to be. So long as you know what size you're going to be, this is just the same as adding on your slider clasp, only it's a bit longer. So that's another good way of having a clasp to slide. Right, so those three are your easy options with your slider. We're now going to have a look at how you can do it without those options. So we've got a slider clasp well, these two are the same. So you've got a slider clasp, but it's got loops. So this, if you've got lots of jewellery findings and you've got these slider clasps, so they're magnetic clasps, and they do what they say on the tin, they slide. So they're nice and easy to use. They're great for people. They're very secure. However, they've got loops. So traditionally this would be for a multi-strand bracelet or necklace, but all you have to do is take one of your ends, you feed it back through your last row, up through another bead, over the loop, back through that bead and along to the next one, up and down, along to the next one, up through the bead, through the loop, back down and back to there. Now I would do that at least twice. So I would come around to the row below before feeding back up. So when you come through, stop one short, go up and then come through that one. Go up and down, the same as before, and then finish. So to finish your thread, you're going to go backwards and forwards like we did when we were adding in new threads. So you go backwards and forwards with that. So that's another one. This is exactly the same, only it's a much wider thread, so a much wider clasp. So it'll work in exactly the same way. It's a sliding magnetic clasp which clicks into place, but you've got a lot more loops to go through. So again, this one's going to take more time. It's a very effective clasp. If you had the option to use that one or that one, then I'd go for this one, because that's just straight across. You don't have to worry about attaching. It just slides on and it's finished. And you can see where I'm saying about having the sliding ends. So there is another option, or two options, depending on the size of your bracelet. Now, these are done with different beads. So this is a Mayuki round, and this is a Delica. The difference being your Delicas are like a tube with a straight edge, and your Mayuki rounds are rounded. And you can see that this is very pliable, flexible. It's like having a piece of fabric. This one's stiff because they're butted end to end with no chance to go anywhere, as against the round ones where they can roll. So they've got a lot more flexibility. So the Delicas give you a beautiful finish, a lot closer finish, so you don't see the ups and downs, you just see that row going backwards and forwards, whereas this gives you an undulation in both directions. It's personal taste. Whether you prefer Delicas or rounds is definitely personal taste. Delicas are smaller, so they're narrower this way. So I think there's the same number of rows in that as that, if I remember rightly. But you'll have to use more rows for the Delica. So that's something to remember when you're sizing it. Definitely measure, don't just rely on, oh, the pattern says I need to do 70 rows. Double check what bead it's using. So for this one, I've literally just looped my thread. This is, I think, the most insecure means of attaching a clasp to your beading. Literally, I've just looped my thread. The same with the other one. I haven't finished it, and I've looped it several times through there. You're limited in the amount of times because of the size of the Delica beads. The last thing you want to do is force it and snap one of your beads. So it just has thread to the clasp. That has the risk of the thread pulling through the jump ring. If you can take it directly to a closed clasp, that's the other thing that you can secure it. But it's a precarious clasp, and also because this is Delicas, it'll work because that's going to hold its shape. If you did it with this, it wouldn't hold at all. So that's one way of doing it. The other way to make it more secure would be to add either a cord end tip or some French wire. If you use the wire guardians, if you use the wire guardians or the French wire, it creates a little loop that is metallic against metallic, so it can't pull through your jump ring, and it's not going to abrade the thread, because that will abrade as more often than not after you've used it, that will give way. So put your wire guardian on, or put your French wire on, and that will resolve that one and become an okay means. So that's not bad, but you've had to finish all the ends because you can't hide anything there. That's on complete view. So that's another method. The other method is for a wider one, I've just tapered it. So you can either do that on the loom and graduate it down, or this is just square stitch, and I've just added 3 rows of square stitch at the end and then added my clasp or my jump rings to add my clasp to. So again, if you wanted to, you could use a guardian there, either directly to there or come to this bit and put a wire guardian on the end, and that will give you that extra security of not having the thread directly on your wire of your jump ring. So lots of different options for you there. Like I say, for speed, ease and security, these are your best methods of attaching a clasp, whether you want it adjustable, whether you've got it fixed so you just want a jump ring either end, or whether you've got a slider with the clasp already attached. They're great to go, and the others will all work if you don't have that. So don't worry if you haven't got them. You can still do your loom beading, but have a look out for those. And that is how you finish off your bracelets with your clasp. So I've been Alison Tarry. Thank you for joining me on the JM Academy to learn all about loom beading. We look forward to seeing you again soon.